This is the final part of my Avengers run through. This one I'm just going to go through the Epic Collections and Omnibus. You can see I've got the Epic Collection for the first part of the Avengers, because the Omnibuses are long out print and ridiculously expensive, so I've just gone for the Epics. Though I must admit, I love the Epics, so there's absolutely no problem, but I won't be getting the Avengers Omnibuses if they ever do reprint them. I might change my mind on that, who knows. But anyway, this is the Avengers 1 and it's 1 to 20. So you've got the initial part of the story. Obviously the Avengers were formed because of Loki. Loki started the whole ball rolling. Pretty bad for him, wasn't it? So see, if he hadn't done that, if he had decided, it could have been completely different. We'd just had the Defenders, we'd have had X-Men, all those kind of, but no Avengers. Great thing. I've never had issue 1, so it's obviously, but I think personally, Epic Collections, Omnibus, will you ever get as nice as that? And also the thing is, you can read it and enjoy it, and you're not going to be fearful of, oops, slightly ripping one of the pages and suddenly devaluing your slabbed issue. So I think it's just great to always have these. Obviously, people can have both. So you've got a great storyline here where you've got, obviously, Fantastic Four are contacted by the team. But instead, of course, you end up all these other characters. Thor, you've got... now, pity they didn't contact, obviously, Dr. Doom or Rawhide Kid, but of course that would be a bit tricky, wouldn't it? But, or Spider-Man even. Spider-Man could have answered the call, and we'd have had Spider-Man in the Avengers. That just wouldn't have happened. But of course, Spider-Man did eventually become an Avenger. You got, of course, Thor going back, obviously, to Odin and going off exploring, looking for Loki, because they know it's Loki. Loki's behind it, clearly, and... great yarn. And at the end, of course, they form, we're going to be the Avengers. And that's first issue. Then into the second issue, Space Phantom. I had that issue. Regret I got rid of that one. That's one issue. Getting lots of issues that I regret getting rid of. Avengers issue 2, definitely one of them. Space Phantom, the story's a bit weird. You've got basically lots of distrust. You've got the Space Phantom, he can swap bodies. So you've got this storyline where he obviously takes over, becomes the Hulk for a bit, and then he becomes Iron Man, becomes Giant Man. And before you know it, they're virtually falling out. However, he makes a misjudgment at the end, and on into the next issue. Next issue, I love that. Next issue, you've got Avengers feature, The Submariner. And of course, absolutely brilliant one. Now, in one of my reviews, I did a quick run through. This is the first issue I've got, issue 3. I have to say my copy slightly worse than this one, but it's still absolutely brilliant issue. I love this a bit where he has to sort of project himself off into other parts of obviously the Marvel Universe. You've got here Iron Man goes and meets Fantastic Four, then he goes off to Spider-Man and also the X-Men. So you've got a sort of connection between all the characters. How he knows where they are is beyond me. Because I mean the thing is, if he knows where Spider-Man is, wouldn't he just project also, if you want to find his identity, just project into his room and you know he's Peter Parker? So anyway, I don't know how this machine knew where these people were, but obviously they go off and battle the Hulk. Of course, Hulk has left the Avengers at this point. He's a bit disgruntled and he's teamed up with Submariner. Obviously that's not going to last, but of course it does eventually, because of course we end up with the Defenders many, many years later. Then, of course, you've got the classic Captain America joins, which I must admit, personally, has one of the daftest origin stories of all, in terms of obviously being frozen in an ice block. Never, ever. I've just been reading the 12, where they were in suspended animation. That would have made so much more sense. And not only that, you could have had suspended animation, and you could have probably introduced Submariner and the Human Torch all in suspended animation. And then, of course, you could have brought them back. And then you could have... But instead, you had the story with Bucky, which I never, ever liked, with off the plane and all that sort of stuff. Of course, Bucky came back in the end anyway as well. So Winter Soldier and all that sort of stuff. Well, you got this weird alien and the story obviously resolves there. And you got into the invasion of the Lava Men. Great story. Now, Lava Men, of course, there was the Lava Man story. I love that story with Thor. So you've got the Lava Man story. And then the Hulk's in this as well. So the Hulk is sort of like they finally, near enough, that's it for the Hulk storyline. They decide, obviously, at this point, we're not going to do much more with the Hulk. So we're off to probably one of my favourite stories, Zumo and his Masters of Evil. I loved that one. Absolute classic. Masters of Evil, Brilliant story. And that story continued for quite a bit. You had, of course, Wonder Man, you had the Enchantress, Executioner, they all come along. The other of the Masters of Evil was slightly less underpowered in comparison. Melter is a bit of a, well, obviously more an Iron Man character, though Radioactive Man was a pretty decent character, though he didn't seem to continue, he sort of just vanished off somewhere. So, but you had Kang. I love the Kang story, excellent story. And then, of course, you've got Wonder Man, which is sort of Masters of Evil story. And, of course, another Masters of Evil story where you got Immortus, was sort of connected with Kang, Doctor Doom, Scarlet Centurion, etc. Then you got the Spider-Man one, another Kang story. Kang story there. And you had some really quite decent stories. I really love this period of the Avengers. I know some people don't. Some people preferred a lot later. I must admit, it's quite an unusual set of characters at this point. Giant Man, Captain America. I loved them anyway. Not all the stories. That one wasn't particularly brilliant. This one, next one with the Wasp story, wasn't particularly great. However, the next story, Now by my hand shall perish a villain. I love that one. And this is where the changeover. This changeover, you got a new set of characters in the next story. Not in this story, but this was like the start point of that changeover. And you got obviously the Enchantress and the Executioner still in the story. Now, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch and Hawkeye join with Captain America in the story. So you go on to the new Avengers. And then run through. They have lots of little problems. They've got the Commissioner, and I can't his name right. Commissioner, I always called him. Swordsman and Power Man, and so on and so on. So you've got some really, really good. Lots of people thought they were a bit underpowered as characters, but they were always squabbling, always a problem. But I thought they were a much more interesting team, maybe, than the originals, who were all sort of like super powered. You know, Thor, Iron Man. They never really. There wasn't that sort of same conflict within the team, though. So I like those stories. So that's the end of Epic 1. Then on to Epic 2, and you've still got the lineup, the Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, etc. one, and with Captain America, and you had some really great stories here. You got this one with Power Man, where they're losing for the first time. It's not like in the original Avengers, where you never felt that they could ever lose. Not with Thor, Iron Man, Giant Man. They were too good. Captain America. Here, you always felt that there was always a chance that you could have like 2 or 3 issues where they would lose. You got like Enchantress, Power Man there. And then you go on to the Kang story, which was a classic story, which led on to lots and lots of Kang stories later on, because, of course, you've got... I don't want to spoil the story on that one. Once an Avenger, just a classic set of stories. I love the future ones where they went off to the future. And brilliant tale. And then you've got Doctor Doom. When they come back, they meet Doctor Doom. Now, Doctor Doom is a bit of an underpowered Doctor Doom in this. He's, really, probably reality, against this lot, he probably would have won easily. But, of course, he underestimates the new Avengers and doesn't always work out, does it, for him? Atuma or Atoma, I don't know, however anyone says that. Great story. And then you got Giant Man's back into this one. Among Us walks a Goliath. You got a great story there. And the Collector turns up, good old Collector. Now he's had a bit of a checkered career with the Avengers. Over the years, he even got the Beetle just for good measure. Now the Beetle could barely beat the Human Torch or Spider-Man. Obviously, great character against the Avengers. And then you got the Living Laser stories, and you got Serpent story, and many, many others. It's changed a bit because obviously earlier it was Stan Lee, then it became Roy Thomas. And I think these stories were quite good in the end. I must admit, when I first read them, I wasn't so enamoured by them, but I must admit I enjoy them a little bit more now than I did back then. You've got Living Laser, never one of the greatest villains of all time. The Ultroids as well, another story that was slightly... maybe slightly underpowered, but still actually quite a decent story, and introduced really the Black Widow into the Avengers, who turned up fairly regular. And of course, next story, Hercules. Love this one. And then another story which was really good. I love this one, Submariner one. Suddenly Submariner, absolutely brilliant Submariner story where he gets the Cosmic Cube. I mean, it's I loved the end bit. I'm not going to say what happens at the end, but just a absolutely classic ending, I think, is one of my favourite ends. And then Then you got what's you got here. You got some bonus material. The other one had bonus material as well, and you got some brilliant bonus material. I love the bonus material in these epics as well as the omnibus editions. Then on to, and I actually got volume 3 here. Now volume 3, and again I'm not going to go through all the stories, but you've got Diablo's storyline, and then on to the Red Guardian, which of course introduces a little bit more detail about the Black Widow. So we've got a lot more about her. And then Red Guardian story could have been a contender, but obviously it was sort of like the Russian Captain America story. So you've got Captain America there battling against, and well, you've actually got now, you've got Iron Man and Thor, and everyone comes back into the storyline. So you've got a bit more of a, and this is the annual, the Avengers annual, absolute classic Avengers annual. Obviously throws all the characters. You've also got a lot of great villains. You've got Living Laser, not the greatest of villains, but as well as other ones, you've got Ultimo against Thor. That's pretty decent. And then on to the next story, which is slightly an unusual one, with the Super Adaptoid. I love the Super Adaptoid. Now, Super Adaptoid, great character, where you sort of can develop, obviously, all the powers of, got a slither, apparently, of the Cosmic Cube. It gives him this ability to be able to adapt to all these powers. And of course, he becomes like Hawkeye, becomes, and of course, he's got the Wasp's wings and all those sort of things. And he's pretty decent. So he can do quite well. Then you got the human top, or I should say Whirlwind by this point. Now Whirlwind was, there was a connection with the Wasp. I'm not going to tell the story of that, but really quite, I like Whirlwind actually. He was sort of character, I don't think he was used as well as he could have been. I think it was a pity. There's quite a few villains that are like that. You just think that character could have had a lot more potential than just the occasional 1 or 2 appearances. Then you've got Magneto returns, Magneto story, and of course Black Knight there as well. Black Knight lives again, which is quite nice. They put him on the front cover there. And then you got, so weirdly, you've got the story that, you've got 49, Mine is the Power, it's a Magneto story. But you've got 50, which I would have thought would have been much better to have been a Magneto story. They ended up with this sort of obviously brilliant bit of artwork by John Buscema, To Tame a Titan, which is more really Hercules. So it's like a Hercules, obviously he's got all his fellow things, but of course he's against someone like, and obviously one of the gods, and Typhoon there. But some of the Avengers are not particularly needed. Then the Clutches of the Collector again. The Collector turns up again. He never learns, that guy. He's always turns up a lot later, and I think it was about issue 119 or something. He regularly turns up. Issue 25, I think he was 26, turns up again. However, he never learns. Obviously, I don't know why he always wants the Avengers. Why doesn't he want the Fantastic Four occasionally? What about the X-Men? No, I always want the Avengers. He's always collecting these. He's got this, obviously, this creature here, this robot that he uses. Obviously, yet again, another failure. And got Black Panther in the story. You've got the Grim Reaper. So Black Panther becomes part of the Avengers. And really got quite a change in the Avengers at this point. Got a lot of characters, lots and lots of different artists as well. Really never seen. It was only when you look at it in the Epic Collection, I think, maybe obviously if you're buying them at the time, you suddenly think, oh no, it's that artist, whatever. But there was quite a lot of churn. Of course, this was a story from this one, the X-Men story. So you got Black Panther in a slightly, obviously, different outfit as well. Then you got the New Masters of Evil. I love that one with Jarvis' character. That's just good as he goes through. He's got and you got Black Knight there as well. Radioactive Man. At least the Radioactive Man turned up again. Obviously, Claw, Whirlwind, the Melter, Black Knight, and the Radioactive Man. I mean, that is quite a team. Now, that would have been a really good if that was back in the original days with the Avengers. And of course, there's a twist and turn in the storyline there, which I'm not going to spoil, but you've got all the way through. And I love this next story, which was the time travelling one, where there was a bit of a Doctor Doom with his time machine, bit of an issue, and they're back. And you got the new Avengers versus the old Avengers. Absolute one of my favourites. Avengers Annual 2. Love that one. And they've got all the other characters as well, Daredevil and all those sort of characters. So this is a real... And then it ends with the good old Not Brand Eck story, as well as some extras at the back. Put it on that side. And my final one, I'm not going to go through this because this is a bit later than what I was going to run through. And also I've got a couple other Avengers as well, which I want to quickly show you this one. This is the Avengers, one with the Avengers Defenders story, one of my favourite Avengers story of all time. And as well as also, it's got some other classic stories, obviously the Thanos one as well. I love that one. And Mantis storyline as well as the Ultron tale and all those sort of things. Some really good stories in this one. So that's the Avengers of Epics. Now, unfortunately, I've got a few gaps because the reason is, and I did notice when I was going through this, I noticed the numbering system, unfortunately, doesn't match because I've got, so there's about 3 issues that I haven't got. Luckily, I think I've got those issues. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. Anyway, I'm not going to buy the Epic Collection now for volume 4. I should do maybe, but well, just for the couple of issues, what can you say? So this is Avengers. Now, this one's volume 3. Now, obviously, the Omnibus is always much heavier, but Avengers 1 and 2, maybe as they come out, I might treat myself to 1 and 2 as well, but I just wonder if they ever will come out. Of course, you've got the brilliant introduction by Roy Thomas. Always love those. And then on to the Avengers. I'm not going to run through the stories because I'm going to be doing a review of the Avengers omnibuses. But it's got this, obviously, the Wasp story. I love that story. I drew that. That was one of I love that one. Absolutely. One of my favourite drawings of the Wasp. And of course, you've always got the one big difference between the Epic Collections and omnibuses. You've got the letters pages. I love letters pages. I have to say they're always good. Also, I love the listing here with the ranks of Marveldom as well. Of course, you've got the classic wedding of the Wasp in the yellow jacket. And you've got Manet and many absolute classic, of course, and Barry Smith. Brilliant. I love that storyline, Barry Smith. Of course, Hawkeye has become Goliath at this point. And you've got the great classic story with Squadron Sinister. And of course, also Captain Marvel there. You've got Scorpio and the Zodiac story. And lots of other ones. You've got Archon, and of course, Silver Surfer's back again because he went off at the end of the Magneto story. You've got Scarlet Witch, etc. So you've got some really great stories. Lethal Legion, a bit like the Masters of Evil, but just not happen to be called the Masters of Evil. They're now the Lethal Legion. Though slightly underpowered, no Radioactive Man for some weird reason. He didn't turn up. And the Scorpio story. And then you've got the Liberators. Oops, don't want to say that. And you've got Black Widow, Valkyrie, etc. And again, onto many others. Oh, AIM there. And, oh, I love those stories. That story is just, Arthur C. Clarke's, loves a bit. Beautiful stuff. I love that one. Absolutely one of my favourites. Jarella. Always a character I always felt that they should have done more with, but that's life. And then you've got the end. Obviously, I love the way they did this. There's something I think they should have, they do this with this one. Would have been nice if the Epic Collections had done the same. Now, obviously, it's too late because obviously they brought out all the Epic Collections. But I always felt it would have been nice if they had just done the covers of all of the comics in this thing. I think it's one of the nicest features. I think DC are doing this now as well. I've seen it a few times anyway. So you got that one, and then on to the final one. Again, I'm not going to run through it particularly because I'm just going to show you what's in. So I've got some really great stories here. You've got some classic, obviously the Kree Skrull ones. You've got obviously the classic Olympus stories, the Barry Windsor Smith story. I love those ones. And then you've got some of my favourites, and these are one of the earliest comics that I bought. Ones I remember particularly buying of the American ones, like Avengers 111 with Magneto. Of course, you've got the Daredevil story 99. You've got Magneto one in 110. Also, never got that one. Never ever bought that one. So it's nice to get it in this sort of volume. And also you've got, of course, Mantis turned up in the story. You've got the Mantis storyline there. And then you've got the Avengers Defenders War. I loved that. I've also got the shown the Epic. So I've got both. What can you do? And it finishes on the collector story. And, of course, the artwork is brilliant all the way through this. I love brilliant, superb Neil Adams work. Can't beat that. Of course, you've got, like I said, the Kree Skrull War. I always say skull. Skrull. Get it right. Get the whole word out. Skrull. And brilliant Barry Windsor Smith with Ares there. And the Olympus storyline. Love that. Issue 100. Whatever, God's. It's always trouble sometimes these the gutter there, where the gods. Brilliant one. Obviously, you've got lots of the Avengers there, all across that with Ant-Man, obviously the Hulk. So it's a real sort of team up of all the characters that have been. Now, the only one that's missing, that weirdly, Black Widow's not in it. Just looking at it, maybe they mentioned the reason why Black Widow. Obviously, strange. Anyway, Sentinels, great storyline there. Like I say, it all leads up to, for me, one of my favourite stories. I love this one, and that's the with two beside them. Absolute classic with the Avengers. And of course, you had Daredevil, Black Widow. When I first saw that, what a cover. That cover immediately sold it to me with old hardly can see Magneto. Of course, he's sort of completely different from what, of course, happens in the story, but it's just obviously a great cover there, all the same. So that's it, running through all these things. I love the Avengers. I've always loved the Avengers. Great stories. And even the comics now, the Avengers comics, all the way through like 80s, 90s, whatever. Just dip into. I must admit, I haven't followed them as consistently I did between obviously 1 and 100. But I still occasionally pick up epics. I've got quite a few epics of the other ones, like when Crystal was in the team, Black Knight, all the other characters that Dr. Droom, or whatever his name was. I always called him Dr. Droom. But all those excellent. Thoroughly enjoyed those Avengers stories. And I'm going to say, hopefully, also, of course, enjoyed the Avengers films and things. So that's it. That's a run through of all my Avengers collection at this point. I'm certain I will be adding more to the Avengers collection. Maybe I'll do a run through of 1 to 100 where I've actually got more of 1 to 100. I suspect I will never get issue 1 or 100 now. So, hope you found this of interest. Bye.